Hello, everybody. Dr.Rick Wallace dropping in on you. Look, I'm not going to be too long. I'm actually on my way to go meet Marion. We got something we need to do together. And I'm leaving the office to go meet her. So I got a few moments, but I want to talk to you about something heavy on my heart from a conversation I was having earlier. And it really kind of hit me. It's not like it's the first time I've discussed it. I mean, I have visited this topic quite frequently and dealt with it on multiple levels. And as a therapist and counselor, I deal with it a lot with my clients. But I want to talk about it from a different perspective today. And I hope that, I spark interest, I spark conversation, and I entice those who are able to watch this video or to hear it in its podcast form, to be willing to move and take action. Before I get started, I want to, as usual, encourage you to show your love and support by supporting the Odyssey Project. The information you need to show your love and support will always be in the description box. With that out of the way, look, I want to talk to you about Grandma's secrets. We love to refer to a point in time when, all the way up to roughly the beginning of the 60s, where at least 75% of young black children were born, 75% of black children were born into two-parent households. We love to talk about the 30-year, 40-year, 50-year marriages of our grandparents and great-grandparents and how things have changed. And anyone who knows me knows that there are few things I value more than marriage. Very few things. I hold marriage in one of the highest regards that anything can be held. I believe it is the institution on which the family is building. Without the family institution, you can't possibly truly holistically prepare children to become functional and effective and productive adults. So marriage is huge. It's not just about romance. Marriage isn't just about connecting with someone. It's not just about facilitating sex. Marriage is literally a responsibility, a social responsibility. So I hold it in highest regard. So as I talk about this, I'm not here to defame marriage. I'm here to talk about a truth that we're going to have to visit. I want to talk about Grandma's secrets. I want to talk about some of the things that Grandma kept secret that created the illusion of a pristine marital environment and utopia. I want to talk about the fact that if we really knew Grandma's secrets, it would really truly explain a lot of the dysfunction, the distrust, the perpetuation of trauma, the lack of healing from trauma. But Marion and I were talking earlier this morning, and it wasn't on this topic. I was actually having this conversation with someone else later. But earlier this morning, Marion and I were talking about the fact that black women have been, for eons, conditioned to serve, even to the detriment of themselves. And what do I mean by that? I mean that they're looking out for their kids. They're looking out for their husband. They're looking out on their job. They're looking out for everyone else but themselves. And so you find you find black women who are spent. You find black women who have given everything they've got and gotten very little in return. Not even from their children. You don't know how many people I deal with who have given them their children the type of lives that so many kids that I come in contact would die for and are unappreciated. And a lot of that comes from there's more to it than providing the material things. I get it. But And when those things are lacking, it shows up. But some of it is simply a sense of entitlement. Some of it is a warped understanding of the role of the woman. A lot of children just simply believe that's what their mom is here for, to facilitate their every whim and to let them do whatever they want to, and to make sure they have everything they need to do to totally crash. They don't want to be corrected. They don't want to be guided. They don't want to be held accountable. So anything outside of just sitting up and co-signing their bull and giving them the space and the resources to really truly act on that BS, they don't want to hear it. So when mom sits up and holds them accountable, all of a sudden mom becomes the enemy. But that's just one area. There's so many different areas. And I was reared by my great-grandparents, so a lot of things I got to see up firsthand. I got to see a culture that was more than just a little interesting to me. I never ever saw my grandfather step out on my grandmother, never saw my grandfather even raise his voice to my grandmother. That's where a great deal of my calm demeanor with my wife and my children comes from. It comes from watching the person I felt who was the strongest man on the planet always maintain his composure no matter how crazy things got. It was a sense of confidence of knowing that I will get it figured out. And that's how I approach everything in life, no matter how crazy it is or what's going on at the time, I will figure it out. But there were things that my grandmother would say, not pertaining to my grandfather, but pertaining to other things she saw. For instance, one time she saw her niece's husband in a car with another woman and literally pulled up on side of him, but never told. And she would explain to me that you don't do that. You don't put him out there, this, that, and it's this thing. And so I started to look and I started to watch conversations between the older relatives in the family. And there was this almost like universal understanding that the black woman didn't out the black man. And I understand loyalty to a certain extent, but loyalty to the detriment of yourself and your children comes at a price. Okay, there were women who had husbands who were physically abusive, but never told anyone, hid it from the kids as long as they possibly could, made that man seem to be something that he wasn't. There were women who had men who had multiple families outside of the house, with whole women and families in another place where they're dwelling that he was supporting, and they kept it hid. There were women with husbands who were pedophiles and ephebophiles. A lot of people say, well, what's an ephebophile? A lot of people confuse some aberrant sexual tendencies and behaviors by men to be pedophilia, when actually it's ephebophilia. Pedophilia is the sexual attraction to prepubescent children who haven't developed in any way in a sexual way. They look like little kids. That's a pedophile. An ephebophile is someone who's attracted to a postpubescent adolescent. So someone who has developed sexually, but is still underage. And so you got women who are married to these men who are covering for them. Matter of fact, there's so many times now that I deal with clients where the man was more protected than the child he was violating. Matter of fact, the child he was violating became the enemy, the outcast. In many instances, not only was it already natural for her to cover and keep the secret, in many instances she was being advised by the clergy, the pastor, not to out him, not to expose him, not to file charges, because he was the head of the household, because he played a role. And you got to understand the dynamic. A lot of this was happening at a time when the woman was still in the home. So the woman didn't have the skill set to out the man and say, I got it. She was kind of in a quagmire, so to speak, to where she really didn't have a choice that made sense to her. If I want the kids to be taken care of, if I want a roof over my head, then I've got to absorb this maltreatment, not only of myself, but in many times the child. Now, what you have to understand, and in keeping these secrets, that was an image put out of certain type of people. And again, please get me and understand me correctly. This isn't an assault on black men, because there's some great black men out there. There's some unbelievable great men. I really truly believe my grandfather was one of those men. Never seen him do anything that I couldn't respect, ever. And I don't think he's perfect, because we sit down and we've talked about his imperfections. But as far as how he handled my grandmother and handled me, he was just solid. He had a level of character that was unquestionable, and he executed his character, so his integrity was sharp. And there were men out there who weren't. And those are the things that we have to look at. Grandma's secrets. We have to realize that what has happened is Grandma's Secrets has created an entire generation of young black males. When I say young black males, I'm talking about anybody under 50. That has created an entire generation of young black males who actually sit up and look at the length of their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents' marriages and have an illusion about what those marriages were and how they were carried out. And they view today's culture through the lens of how they saw those marriages. And it's creating this massive conflict with what's really going on. It has to be the women's fault. Or, what's going on? Well, what's going on is more complicated than I can visit in this short period of time, because like I said, I'm getting close to where I'm going to meet my wife. For those who don't know, Marion is my wife. And you'll see some of her videos on here. She has her own channel. The link should be in the description box as well. And she speaks from her experiences and where she works in the community, which is usually young black women and young black girls who have experienced trauma as children. But anyway, and she touches on a number of other social issues as well. But in essence, what you got to look at is we're looking at these things through a lens that paints a certain picture that is false, because a lot of those marriages, while they lasted long, were not healthy, and they did not produce healthy offspring. Because you can't have a child in a toxic situation and still think you're going to produce healthy children. You'll produce kids who can put up good facades because you're putting up good facades. They'll learn how to cover and internalize. But at the end of the day, anything internalized will eventually erupt when it pressurizes to a high enough level. It will explode. It's just simply what will happen. There's going to be some form of a psychotic break at some point if it's not processed, if it's not dealt with in the proper manner. I'm saying all this to say we've got an elephant in the room, because I don't believe for a second, with looking at the research that I am constantly looking at so that I can be the best I can to help my clients, I can tell you now that we haven't dealt with this issue, and it's still plaguing us. It's just plaguing us through a different dynamic. Now we have a situation where children aren't safe, not because dad in the house is a problem, it's because dad isn't in the house. Another part of this that we have to really look at is the fact that we haven't learned how to really truly grasp the responsibility and concept of marriage, because everybody's focused on the romance. And the truth of the matter is, romance didn't even enter into the equation of marriage until the 12th or 13th century. Marriages were about responsibility. Marriages were about building. Marriages were about coming together with someone who had a like type of character, value system, desired outcomes in life, how they wanted to live their life, where they wanted to live their life, and through what principles they wanted to live their life. And you married that person and you built. But the marriage was built on something called covenant. Regardless of whatever religion or faith you claim, that marriage has a covenantal element and component, meaning that it's not solely about how you feel, it's about your responsibility. And because most people act and move on their feelings, when it doesn't feel right, they bounce. When it doesn't feel right, they step out. When it doesn't feel right, they go to someone else, you know, even if they're not going to permanently leave the marriage, to get what they may be missing. There's no urgency or compulsion to work on the relationship because it's all about feelings. I don't, I'm not excited. The honeymoon phase is gone. Well, see, marriage is about building. Marriage is about commitment. Marriage is about covenant. And when you truly understand that, I tell people all the time that the way I handle my wife isn't based on how I feel. The way I handle my wife is based on the covenant that I made with her and God when we got married. It's based on that contract that was presented through vows that said I would XYZ, I would XYZ. And through that is how I act and I treat her. I don't treat while my wife treats me great and 99% of the time I'm always in a good place around her, we just have a good space. There's not a whole lot of conflict with us. You know, we've had our moments as we grew together because we came together sort of late in life. But I mean, as we grow, the times of conflict, which is normally in difference of opinion, has dwindled down. Plus, I just simply know how to handle my wife. And I'm not actually handling her in that sense. I'm treating her in a certain way that takes her guard down. And I respond to her guard being down by honoring it instead of taking advantage of it. But how I treat my wife isn't based on how I'm feeling about her at any given moment, because there are those sporadic moments where I ain't feeling you right now, you tripping. But I'm never treating her like she's tripping. I'm treating her, matter of fact, I have actually developed this behavior to where when my wife has upset me, she actually gets treated better than when everything is good. It's an actual conscious effort. If I'm normally taking your stuff out to the car for you. Well, I'm going to come up to the room and get it instead of wait for you to come down. I'm going to make sure I kiss you goodnight. I'm going to make sure that I do X, Y, Z. Why? Because it's immensely important that I show you that no matter where we are at any given moment, we're going to be okay. And that is so important. Look, I'm here to be my wife, so I'm about to get off and go get ready to take care of what needs to be taken care of with her. But I just wanted to stop by and talk about that. That's something we're going to have to visit long term. Is grandma's secrets and how it has impacted us. The fact that grandma, if we knew some of the secrets that grandma kept that put grandpa in a light that made him seem like a hero when actually he was wreaking havoc. And obviously I'm not talking about everyone, but I'm talking about this happened enough that there was a culture, that was literally a protocol to dealing with it. And if we don't deal with that, we're not going to be able to really truly cultivate the type of relationships we need in order to build strong children, because we need that environment in order to build strong. We can't talk about restoring the Black family nucleus until we admit that there were some things going on in that family nucleus that was not good for us. On that note, look, I'm going to get ready to get off of here, meet up with the wife, but I just wanted to stop by and drop that on you. Talk to you soon. I'm out.